there is a high probability that the organization you work for is low performing. And unfortunately, you are not alone. In study after study, it has been shown that roughly 80% of organizational performance falls somewhere between mediocre and good. This low performance has a significant impact on customer satisfaction. Specifically, your low performance of your organization results in 4 basic things. First, the quality of your products falls short of customer expectations. Second, you have trouble filling critical roles with capable people. Third, your processes are a tangled mess of complexity and inefficiency. And finally, your people are unsatisfied and not engaged in their work. This leads us to a fundamental question. Just how big is the performance gap between those at the top and those on the bottom? The short answer is the gap is huge and disproportionately lopsided. Let's take a look at 2 examples. The first example is Apple. In 2017, the effectiveness of their processes and structure of their product development and supply chain operations led to smartphones that captured more than 58% of the market share. But more shockingly, Apple captured over 75% of the industry's profit. So basically, this left the whole industry of smartphone makers battling each other for the remaining 25% of profit. Our second example is Toyota. Toyota is one of the most studied and successful organizations in history. From product development to operations management, their performance is legendary. For example, they have posted almost 85 straight years of profitability. This is almost unheard of in any industry, especially in the highly competitive market of automobiles. Second, in any given year, Toyota posts more profit than Ford, GM, and Chrysler combined. Organizations such as Apple and Toyota are an example of high-performing organizations. Their disproportionate gap in performance from lower-performing organizations is what Michael Porter calls competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is when an organization's strategy creates a defensible and sustainable position in the market. It is made up of 2 fundamental concepts. First, how will your organization create more value for the customer relative to the competition? An important point to understand is that value is defined by the customer. For example, it is the customers of Apple and Toyota that decide if their products are of higher value relative to the competition. Second, how will your organization capture more value in terms of revenue and profits? Again, relative to the competition. No organization stays in business without receiving resources in exchange for its products and services. One final point I would like to emphasize is that when it comes to competition, all performance is relative. Why is this important? Because an organization can improve its performance in absolute terms and still lose out to the competition. For example, an organization can reduce their unit costs year over year. However, if the competition reduces their cost by more, the organization will lose relative to the competition. Competitive advantage is the outcome of an organization's strategy. And strategy is fundamentally about being different. As Steve Jobs said, you can't look at the competition and say you're going to do it better. You have to look at the competition and say you're going to do it differently. But what does this mean to be different? This may be one of the most misunderstood concepts in management history. Michael Porter showed that in order to be different, you can only achieve it in 2 basic ways. The first is by performing different activities from rivals. The second is by performing similar activities in different ways. Let's take a look at the strategy of performing different activities. Apple has had one successful product after another by leveraging this approach. For example, the iPod was not the first digital music player on the market. But when Apple combined the iPod with the newly created iTunes, this made for a powerful competitive advantage that was hard to overcome. Next, let's take a look at the strategy of performing similar activities differently. Toyota designs, assembles, supports and markets cars across the globe. However, their competitors, such as Ford, Honda, and GM, perform those same activities. But here is the key point: Toyota performs those activities in fundamentally different ways. For example, they use pull-based production, versus the more traditional push-based method used by most automotive manufacturers. And that difference has helped Toyota become one of the most successful organizations of all time. So, this brings us to the biggest question of this video. How does an organization go from being mediocre to high-performing? Specifically, what would have the biggest impact on helping you achieve competitive advantage in your industry? Study after study, decade after decade, the answer keeps coming back that in order to drive high performance, you need to invest in your management system. The management system is the primary driver of managerial thinking and action. This behavior of management shapes the organizational culture, which in turn drives performance. In fact, the investment in management will yield a higher ROI than any other investment an organization can make. Not even research and development, information technology, or automation will yield a higher return. We just talked about why a management system is important, so let's now discuss how it works. Basically, it works by driving two fundamental behaviors of management. First, how do we integrate the organization's product, structure, process, and people into a coherent whole? And second, how do we increase the rate of problem solving to continuously adapt to a changing environment? Dr. Deming said that every organization is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. Unfortunately, 80% of all organizations are designed to deliver low performance. The primary message of this video is that management matters. In fact, no organization can achieve high performance without fundamentally rethinking their approach to management. Please join us in our next video, where we will deep dive the management system.